Good morning, I'm Father X. Today we'll talk about whether Child Protective Services is incompetent or biased against dads. But this isn't just about complaining. I overcame the CPS nonsense, and I'll give you tips on how to deal with them so their mistakes don't hurt your kids. We'll quickly run through some basic ideas. Then I'll give you real-world stories to show you how CPS really works. Stories you won't believe, but they did happen, and it can happen to you. You need to be ready for the twists and turns. Different states call the agency different names: CPS, DCFS, DSS, but I'll call it CPS for Child Protective Services. A CPS case can be the state versus one or both parents in an abuse or neglect case. Or it can be parent versus parent during a custody battle where both are investigated. I'll focus on child custody cases, but much of what I say applies to both situations. How CPS is supposed to work. What is CPS looking for? CPS is looking for the child's safety and well-being. They look for signs of physical abuse, emotional abuse, neglect, exposure to domestic violence, substance abuse, unsafe living conditions. Basically, they're evaluating, is this home safe? And is this parent responsible, stable, and emotionally fit to care for the child? How does CPS investigate? CPS will typically interview both parents, talk to the child, sometimes privately, visit the child's two homes, talk to collateral sources like teachers, doctors, babysitters, or relatives, review records like prior CPS history, police reports, and court documents. They're trying to piece together the story and find out if the child is in danger. And soon, we'll get into whether they do a good job of this. How to prove you're a good parent. The plain vanilla advice for dealing with CPS is, stay calm and respectful. Getting angry only proves their worst fears. Show a child-friendly home, a clean home, food in the fridge, and schedules for school, mealtimes, and bedtimes. Keep it child-focused. Talk about how you meet your child's needs, school, medical, safety, and not just about your custody fight with your ex. Bring evidence. If your ex is lying, don't just say she's lying. Prove it with texts, emails, police reports, photos, court orders, etc. Be honest. If you made a mistake, admit it. Say what you learned and how you fixed it. The role of CPS. CPS doesn't decide custody, but their report can influence the judge. Your job is to make sure that report is accurate. So now that we know what's supposed to happen, let's introduce reality. During my custody case, I dealt with at least 5 CPS workers, and they were all consistently unable to connect the dots. Not one or two, but 100% of them. In your case, you might be falsely accused and need CPS to see the allegation as false. Or maybe the other parent abused your child and you want CPS to report that accurately. Ideally, CPS would get it right 100% of the time, separating fact from fiction. But you cannot blindly trust that your CPS worker will do a good job on this. I suspect CPS handles the extreme 20% of cases well, where abuse is obvious or allegations are clearly false. But in the middle 80%, where the facts aren't obvious, I have little faith in them. If you rely on CPS for smart, unbiased analysis, then there's a high risk of failure. Think about it. If CPS social workers earn less than other social workers, and it's a brutal job, will CPS attract talented people? CPS is almost designed to have the least qualified people. Many CPS workers would be offended by this, but ignoring CPS's weaknesses only protects the workers, not our kids. Now, to be fair, a lot of CPS allegations in custody cases come back unfounded, where there's no abuse. Many CPS workers know there are lots of false reports and are willing to believe that your case may also be false. But it's your job to prove it to them in a way they can't ignore, because you can't count on them to get it right. You must do their job for them. Now, I'll share stories about these CPS workers and what I learned, along with hardcore tips to handle the CPS beast. Before we continue, I want to announce the family court guides that I created for you with my text, charts, scripts, and the questions I asked to help you prepare for trial. I even made a workbook to help you prepare your testimony. Lemon Squeezy is an online platform where you can get my ebooks. Check it out at fatherx.lemonsqueezy.com. Now, let's get to it. CPS story number 1, getting the facts all wrong. My custody case lasted 40 months. We started in July of year 1. CPS first investigated in August and September. A forensic psychologist evaluated us from January to May of year 2. After a long trial, I got primary custody of our son in November of year 4. I also proved the mother was the only perpetrator of domestic violence and got a 2-year final restraining order against her. Part of why our case dragged on was because CPS screwed up that first investigation. That first CPS lady met with each of us only for about an hour or 2 each. She ran criminal background checks on us, which came back clean, as expected. But, during the violent incidents in our home, when I called the police, the mother and I each filed domestic incident reports, where the police take your statements, but they don't arrest anybody. I never saw what the mother wrote until after we got the final CPS report that revealed the mother's domestic incident reports. So I never had a chance to explain to CPS how the mother lied in her police reports. And CPS never bothered to reconcile the wildly different versions of our stories. In her report to the judge, the CPS worker concluded that domestic incident reports suggest that both parties have initiated physical altercations. The word suggest said it all. She had no clue what really happened. She read the reports and split the blame down the middle without trying to figure out who was telling the truth. Nobody questioned this CPS conclusion, not even the judge. There's a secret code you have to know about family court. If third parties like CPS tell the court that the father is violent, then the mom gets custody. If the mother is violent, sometimes the father gets custody. But if they say both parents were violent, that's a tie. And in family court, a tie goes to the mom. So it was bad for me that CPS thought it was a tie and reported this false conclusion to the judge. That line from CPS of, both of them did it, it was basically a coded way of saying, give the mother custody. And that CPS worker made another big mistake. The mother and I had 3 couples therapists while we lived together, who all knew the mother had anger management issues and was the violent one. The CPS worker spoke to them, and this information was at her fingertips. But because she was incompetent and or biased, she didn't ask the right questions to learn this. Or she learned it, but hid it from the judge. A couple of months later, the court ordered a forensic evaluation. I adapted and changed my strategy because I wasn't going to let another clueless third party get it all wrong. So I spoke with our couples counselors one-on-one and told them what was really happening in court. Our counselors knew the mother was the violent one with anger management problems. I told them the mother was now lying about being a victim of DV, which our counselors knew was a lie. I told them CPS was easily fooled and didn't figure out the mother was the exclusive perpetrator of domestic violence in our home. I told them the judge was clueless because nobody was stepping up to tell the clear truth. I told them domestic violence was a major factor in this custody case, and if the truth didn't come out, then the mother was going to get custody of our son based on her fraud. I asked our counselors to speak with a forensic psychologist and clearly and directly tell her the whole truth. One refused, but 2 of them did speak up. When the forensic report came out, it quoted our counselors, confirming the truth. The mother was the violent one. Here's a short list of things the forensic psychologist said in her report and testimony. Compare this analysis to the CPS worker's vague statement that it seems both parties initiated physical altercations. The forensic evaluator said, couples counselor number 3 shared that the mother had anger management and impulse control issues. Couples counselor number 2 felt that the mother has anger management problems. Isn't it fascinating how the CPS report ignored those key facts? The forensic psychologist found that the father was emotionally and physically battered by the mother. It was hard to defend because he might hurt the mother. The psychologist found that while the mother says now that the father abused her, there's no indication that this is an accurate reflection of his behavior. Indeed, the father informed professionals working with them that the mother was angry and volatile. The mother did not inform any of the professionals of having been attacked by the father, even when they were in the same room and he brought up her anger. It was not until the final incident, when they separated, that the mother began to retrospectively allege abuse. Regarding that final incident, counselor number 3 shared that she doesn't think the father touched the mother. The forensic discussed the issues around the mother and resorting to grabbing a weapon, such as a knife, on so many instances. The forensic told the court, "That's a really impulsive thing to do. It's a lack of, at the moment, really thinking something through rationally. It's certainly unsafe and very concerning." She labeled the mother's behavior as a serious pattern of violence. The forensic added that the mother's subjective perception of things did not line up with the actual situations. She felt there was distortion and exaggeration from the mother. The forensic psychologist shared serious concerns about the mother's anger management problems and their impact on our son. The risk is that even low levels of chronic anger can have a destructive effect on a child's psyche. It means the child cannot really freely express themselves and has to limit themselves in what they say to the person who is so angry at them, because they anticipate the response as a strong negative response. Do you see how much deeper the forensic psychologist went compared to the CPS worker's vague statement that it seems like both parents initiated violence? The difference was huge. CPS did a shallow 1-hour interview and called it an investigation. The forensic evaluator spent about 8 hours with each of us, me and the mom, separately and together, and learned the real story. Here's a key lesson. If a third party only spends an hour with you, they'll probably get the story wrong. That's not enough time to learn the truth. That's why I spent so much time with the forensic evaluator, grinding through every meeting to make sure she understood the facts and had the evidence to prove my case. I even told the forensic evaluator, couples counselor number 2 witnessed A, B, and C. You don't have to believe me. Ask them yourself. I gave her specific questions to confirm the truth. I was doing her job for her. And in her report, she confirmed the father is a reliable reporter and that his stories were logical and consistent with information received from the collateral sources. The father's perception of things overlapped with the psychologists involved. Here's what I learned. Don't assume CPS will uncover the truth. Guide them to it. Be proactive, persistent, and detailed. If they only give you an hour, ask for more time. Keep pushing until they understand. You only get one shot at convincing them, because once they submit a report, it's over. There are no do-overs. If they get it wrong, it can cost you everything. CPS story number 2. Pretend dad's voice doesn't matter. In another CPS investigation, the social worker showed up at my home while I was at work and just left a note. I called and emailed her back several times. No response. A few weeks later, she filed a report with a judge that only included her conversation with the mother. I don't know what possessed that woman to think it was okay to only tell one side of the story. In court, my lawyer told the judge this was a one-sided report with no input from me and basically worthless. The judge realized how absurd that was and ordered a new investigation so CPS could hear my side. CPS story number 3, the incomplete background checks. When CPS submits a report to your custody judge, they include background checks for both parents, but these can be incomplete. They look for criminal convictions. They also pull any domestic incident reports filed with police between you and the mother. This report is what the mom or dad fills out as their sworn statements of what happened. The form is filed with the police even if no one is arrested. It just documents the incident. As I said earlier, our first CPS report is how I first saw the domestic incident reports the mother filed against me. I clearly saw how she lied to the police, and CPS didn't question any of her statements. Believe all women, even if they're lying, right? After CPS gave their report to the judge, I did my own research. I knew the mother had police incidents with her ex-husband and an ex-boyfriend in 2 different states. I filed Freedom of Information requests and got certified copies of those incident reports myself. Sure enough, they showed a pattern. She had a history of domestic violence incidents. One report described her wielding a knife, locking herself in a bathroom, and threatening to end her life. That's the same behavior she showed in my home. That's serious history, but CPS didn't check either parent's past relationships, which would have helped to see who was the likely aggressor in this case. Past behavior is the best predictor of future behavior. But because CPS didn't look, the judge never saw it, until I finally brought it up 2 years later during my trial testimony. The lesson? Don't assume CPS did their homework. If you want the truth to reach the court, you have to pull records, request reports, and build the full picture yourself. If you don't, no one else will. Is Child Protective Services helpful? They're supposed to be experts on healthy child development and protecting children. But as I've raised my son over the years, I've never once thought, wow, that CPS worker was really helpful. I should call them for advice. Not once. Instead, I've always thought of CPS as useless and hope I never deal with them again. That shows how little value they bring to the table. In my case, when we finally went to trial, no one mentioned the CPS reports, and no CPS workers testified. They were basically irrelevant. But your case might be different. Your CPS worker could testify or influence the judge, the guardian ad litem, or the forensic evaluator. Best and worst case scenarios. Ideally, your case has no abuse and no CPS involvement at all. But where the other parent is abusing or neglecting the kids, hopefully CPS can figure that out and tell the judge so they can take action. The worst case is having CPS involved but doing a sloppy job. Flawed reports create false information, and judges often rubber stamp whatever CPS concludes. If that happens, then you have to contradict their findings. It's an uphill battle you don't want. So, make sure CPS understands the facts. Don't just tell them. Show them with evidence and documentation. Ask if they understand it. Email them your statement and evidence so there's a written record. If you only tell them verbally, they can leave it out of their report and pretend you never said it. An email creates proof you provided the information. Also, email them this statement. Write this down. If the mom tells you something concerning, please tell me so I can prove whether it's false. I know what I did and didn't do, but you can't catch her lies. Give me a fair chance to show you the truth. If they still get it wrong, don't panic, but now you have to fix it in court. For every CPS claim, explain what really happened, what CPS thinks happened, and why CPS is wrong. The judge can rule any way they want, but your job is to make it much harder for them to blindly rubber stamp a flawed CPS report. In the next episode, I'll focus on how the mom can manipulate Child Protective Services, and I'll give you more stories about how CPS really works so you can prepare and counter-maneuver. These might be the darkest days of your life. They were for me. I'm making these educational videos to help you navigate this nightmare. If you subscribe, you can get updates when I post more videos. Thank you for liking, subscribing, and sharing with your friends who are in a similar situation. Please support this channel so I can make more videos. You can donate via my YouTube channel's About page using PayPal or Venmo.